In this presentation, we will continue on with our comprehensive sole proprietor problem, entering our first transaction that related to the owner investing some resources, assets, money, and equipment into the business in order to start operations. For more accounting information and accounting courses, visit our website at accountinginstruction.info. To do this, we're going to do some formatting first, a little bit of formatting. If we look at our worksheet here, we can see that we have these two sections, and these are going to be used in order to enter the information, which we will then post to the general ledger. Because we don't want it all in one column, because that makes it more difficult to post, we have these two sets of general journals. We'd like to hide one of them so that our data is as close as possible to where we're going to post to make things as easy as possible. So we'll first hide some cells. So to do that, we're going to put our cursor on the F so you can see the drop down like this. So the F and the drop down and the arrow, left click on it, highlight over to the J, let go, put our cursor on the selected area and right click and then hide. So we'll hide that information, and now we've got our general journal as close to where we'll be posting as possible so that we can work through this. Now as we go through this, we'll get a better idea of the structure of this financial statements or this worksheet and see how it's going to be put together in order to generate and create finally the financial statements. So first we're going to do this one. The data here is going to be on January 1st. New proprietorship. First thing that happens, the owner is going to put some money into the business account as well as some equipment into the account, into the business. The business then is going to use that information hopefully in order to generate revenue. So that means that whenever we go over here and we ask our questions in terms of a journal entry, what's going to happen? I'm always going to go to the chart of accounts and I'm going to go through the normal set of questions, which is cash affected? One. If it is, then which way is it going? And then post that information and then think about the other account that will be affected. That's always easier to do if you have a list of accounts, a chart of accounts, a trial balance. So in this case, we're going to say, is cash affected? And we're going to say it is because the owner's putting in cash and putting in equipment. We'll do this all with one journal entry here, the cash and the equipment. So we're going to say that cash then is going up. Cash normally has a debit balance because it's an asset. We're going to make it go up by doing the same thing to it, another debit. So we're just going to copy cash. I'm going to right click and copy it. We're going to put that on top in C5, right click and paste 1, 2, 3. Now you can obviously just type in cash. That would work too. I'd probably even misspell cash. I'm not going to do it here. But we're going to copy and paste as much as possible, and that'll make the formatting as similar as possible. Note when you do paste, I'm going to right click here. If you do the first one, it's gonna copy the formatting of the cell. That's why the values only is the one that we want. Okay, so then we're gonna put the amount in the debit column. So in D5 or in cell D5, we're gonna put 80,000. Now, usually in most of our transactions, there's only gonna be 2 accounts affected. But for this first one, there's a little bit more because it's that beginning type of journal entry. The owner put in not only cash, but put in equipment. So this is actually a little bit more complex than most of the journal entries we're going to have here. So equipment's going to go in, and so equipment, if we look at our trial balance, is also an asset. Notice what it's not an expense. We don't have equipment expense, nothing's happening to net income. We're putting assets into the company that we will then consume and use. It will be expensed, but not until we use it, not until it will be expensed in the format of depreciation expense. We'll talk about that later. It'll be great. So this is an asset. It's going to go up in the debit direction. So we're going to do the same thing to it again, which is a debit. So I'm going to right click on L10. I'm on cell L10. We are on L10. We're going to right click on it and copy it. We're going to put that underneath in C6. C6, it's right there. We're going to right click on it and paste 1, 2, 3. Then the amount's going to be for 20,000. Now you might ask, where does that 20,000 come from? It's not like we just bought the equipment. And it's kind of going to be like an agreed upon price. It's only ourselves. If it was a partnership, it would be an agreed upon price. We're going to put it on at the value we think it should be on the books for our starting point for the equipment, the point at which we're going to put the cost and then allocate it out with depreciation. When it's a partnership, it's more of a negotiation process. When it's a sole proprietor, then we're putting it on there at our what we think is best to put it on the books, not necessarily cost, because the equipment could have been purchased a time in the past. So we'll do our best to get the value we believe it would be at if we were to sell it at this given time, or some type of fair market value calculation. In any case, we determine that to be $20,000. Now we're going to have to credit something, and the credits then is going to go to the capital account. So the capital account is similar to kind of like a liability, really, because it represents what the company or the business and the sole proprietor owes to the owner in a way. So we've got the 80 and the 20, it adds up to 100. I'm going to do that with a little formula. It's going to be our negative sum formula. I call it the plug formula. This is what we need in order for the debits to equal the credits. I do that with a negative instead of equals, SUM, double click that sum function. And then we could highlight just these two numbers, but I like to highlight the entire debit and credits above that cell we are working with. In other words, sum D5:E6. And that way, if there's any credits, we just get used to doing that all the time. And then enter. And I'm going to make this cell a little bit larger so we can see it. If you see those signs, that just means it's not large enough. There's the credit. Remember, it's a negative here, and that means that if I highlight all the cells, it adds up to 0, gives us a nice quick check with a calculation. Now that's going to go into the capital. Remember that capital has a credit balance. It's an equity account, has a credit balance. It's going to go up by doing the same thing to it, another credit. So I'm going to copy that, right-click and copy. We'll put that in cell C7, right-click and paste 1, 2, 3. Then we'll go ahead and indent this. And it's probably done for you already, but I'll show you where it's at. It's in the Home tab, it's in the Alignment group, and we will increase the indentation. Okay, so that's useful to have. If you don't have that because the cells are, because it's a locked worksheet, which we do sometimes to in order to not have people delete cells or delete formulas that we shouldn't be working in, like delete cells that aren't in the blue area, because that'll mess the worksheet up. So sometimes we lock the worksheet, and that limits some functionality. But the pros hopefully outweigh the cons on that. In any case, here's what we have so far. We're going to go ahead and post this out. Now, this is the process. What we did was make a journal entry, and that's the process of journalizing. So we made a journal entry, journalizing a journal entry, and we journalized it, we made it in this blue area, which we call a general journal. So there's just this piece of paper, this thing is a general journal. And now we're going to do the process of posting. This is a process thing, posting. That's what we're going to do with this journal entry to the general ledger. So here's the general ledger over here. All these accounts are the general ledger. So we're going to go through the process of posting the journal entry to the general ledger. Now I'm using the scroll bar to go back and forth here. There's a couple different ways we can go back and forth. I'll show you that here. Note that before we do that, the trial balance is in order. And this is why it's always good to have a trial balance in front of us, because it'll give us a lot of information just by the fact of the order of it. The assets are going to be up top. I'm going to make those green. So we've got assets, and then we'll always have liabilities. Those are going to be orange for us. Then the equity accounts, light blue for us. Revenue and expense accounts, dark blue for us. It's always going to be that order. It's going to be in the same order on the general ledger, meaning cash is our first account, accounts receivable is our second account on the trial balance, as well as the GL. So if I move around a little faster. The supplies is our third account on the trial balance, our third account on the GL. The prepaid rent is the fourth account, and our fourth account here, which I don't think we even have any pre-rent, so I'm not sure why that's there, but that's there anyways, in case we rent anything. Prepaid insurance, fifth account here, and then we go back up top on the GL, equipment. So on and so forth. So if we know the order of the accounts here, we can see a similar order over there. We know here, of course, when we post this, here's cash on the trial balance, and then of course it's the first account on the GL. So that's going to be our first transaction we'll do. I'm going to do that here since it's really easy to see, and then we'll talk about how to freeze the panes or do some tricky stuff to move around the worksheet to post like equipment, which I'm going to have to move to the right a little bit. Now when we do this, I want to always be posting this with a formula, meaning what I'm trying to do is get this account, this debit, into this cash account on the debit side. We could just type in $80,000. That would be the easiest thing to do. But If we do that, then we don't have a reference of it, and if there's an error, it's really a lot more difficult to fix. So we're a lot better off to use formulas. It's a simple formula. All the GL, all we're going to do is say equals, and then find that cell and point to it. So in this case, equals D5 and enter. So that goes from 0 up by 80,000 to 80,000. And this is just coming from that cell. Now note, I'm using these items up here. These might not be working on a locked cell as well, but if you want to know where they are, they're helpful. Oftentimes, they're in the formulas, I believe. And then they're in the formulas tab. And then they're in the formula auditing, and they're these 3 items. And if you use them a lot like I do, you could right click and put them into the quick taskbar. So there is that. So that's going to be this one. That's going to be the easy one to do. Now over here, we're going to have to scroll to the right a bit to get to the equipment. Now we're going to post this one to the equipment. Okay, so also note that if I go all the way to the bottom, this cell is being used to make up this one. So now this 80,000 is basically being used to make up the trial balance number, which is done automatically for us. And if we go down to the bottom, we're out of balance by 80,000, meaning we have a debit with no relating credit yet because we haven't posted the rest of this journal entry. Okay, so let's do the rest of it here. Now we're going to go to the equipment. Now equipment's going to be over there. I'm going to do this a couple different ways. You may want to try to post this as easy as possible. One, if you've got good eyes, a lot of people like to go down here to I'm at 130% of the worksheet. If we hit this down arrow, we can make it really small. I won't do this to you so you can see it, but you can do it this if your eyes are good and you like to see it small like this, then of course you can see equipment side by side and work with it that way. I'm going to use some other form. I'm going to go back up to 130 because my eyes aren't that good, and probably that's probably not fair to you to do that to you. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over here and freeze the panes. So I'm all the way to the left. What I want to do is keep this side of the screen there and freeze this side. I don't want column A here because that's going to get in the way because I want to see as much of this side as possible. So I'm going to go to the right just a little bit to get rid of column A so that B is flush with the side. So B is flush. Then I want to make sure I'm in column K1 because this is where I want to freeze the panes. I want to freeze these cells B through E. I want these to stay here when we go to the right so that I always see my journal entry. To do that, once we're in this cell, we're going to go to the View tab up top. We're going to go to the Windows group, and we're going to go to the Freeze Panes. And then we'll freeze the panes. And then if we scroll to the right, then you'll notice that columns B through E remain. So that can be a little confusing at first when you work like this, but once you do it, it can be very useful at times. So now we're going to post this one with these frozen panes. So here's the equipment. Here's the equipment here. It's in the same order. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 accounts down. So cash, I'm just gonna go to the right. Accounts receivable, supplies, and then there's equipment. And we can put it side by side. So here's equipment. We want to be on the debit side. Equipment, debit side. We want to get this 20,000 there. I'm not going to do it just typing it because we're going to use formulas. We're going to say equals and point to that 20,000. Once we say enter, the 0 will go up by 20 to 20. And this 20 then is going to be used automatically because of the beautifully formatted worksheet to go over to the trial balance as well. We can see that by clicking just to the left of the frozen panes and then going right with our arrow keys and popping back over. There's the 20,000. So now we're out of balance by 100 because we posted one debit and another debit and no credit. So now we're going to post a credit. That'll put us back in balance. So it's going to be an exciting moment. So we're going to go to the capital account. Capital account's way down here. First dark blue account. So it's in the same order on the GL. So here it is on the trial balance, same order on the GL. So I'm just going to go to the right. Here's our asset accounts. There's our liability accounts. Here's our capital accounts. We want this one down here. Now note, I'm going to have to scroll up just a little bit. I want to be on the credit side this time. We're on the credit side. And if I scroll down, I want to be capital credit side. I'm in cell AB22. Cell AB22. So I'm going to say equals, and we're going to have to scroll up just a bit and point to that capital account, that 100,000, and enter. I'm going to make this a little bit larger so we can see it. So again, if you double click on it, it'll say E7 if your worksheet is exactly the format here. So you could just type in equals E7 and enter. It should pull that over. This 100,000 then is going to be used to create our trial balance. So if I go right to the left of the frozen panes and then use my arrow keys on the keyboard to go right, it'll pop back over. There's our 100,000. Now, if it does that, it means the cell's not long enough. Hopefully it will be by the time you have the worksheet. But that's if you change the size of the cells, then it could change whether or not you can see the number in it, and then all you have to do is change the size of the column, and it'll give you our number. So there's the 100. So there we have it, our first journal entry. What's done now is the owner put in 80,000 cash, so the business has 80,000. It also has equipment, which we valued at 20,000, and it owes that to the owner. So the owner, it owes it back. It's not, nothing is happening to net income, of course. We haven't generated any income. We don't have any expenses yet. All we have is this initial investment of cash and equipment, which we can then use to help us generate revenue. So this is what the company has. We don't owe any liabilities yet. It's all owed back to the owner. Obviously, if we liquidated the sole proprietor at this time, we would give the cash back to the owner and the equipment would go back to the owner. For more accounting information and accounting courses, visit our website at accountinginstruction.info.